He was the biggest star in the world. He had everything: money, fame, houses, cars, women. He could snap his fingers and get anything he wanted, anything except the one thing that mattered. A way to quiet the noise, a way to feel normal, a way to not feel so alone. And so, late at night when the crowds were gone and the entourage was asleep, he would sit at his piano. Or he'd pick up a guitar. He would sing the old gospel songs that reminded him of his mother. He would sing the blues that came from the same dirt he did. And sometimes he'd sing one particular song, a country song. A song so simple and so sad it felt like it was written just for him. He told people it was one of the saddest songs he'd ever heard. He felt it was his story. When you look at his life, you start to understand why. It wasn't just a performance. It was a confession. The loneliness started at birth. He was a twin. His brother, Jesse Garin, was stillborn. From the very first moment he took a breath, he was a survivor who was supposed to be a pair. His mother, Gladys, never let him forget it. She would tell him he was living for two, that he had the strength of two boys. That was a heavy burden for a child. It also planted a seed deep inside him. The feeling of a missing piece, a phantom limb he could feel but never see. He was always half of a whole. That's a kind of loneliness that has no cure. It's a fundamental part of who you are. The song talks about a silence so deep you can hear a pin drop. His life began with a silence where a brother's cry should have been. They were poor. Dirt poor. Growing up in Tupelo, Mississippi, they lived in a 2-room shotgun shack his father built. He was the kid with the hand-me-down clothes, the quiet boy who felt out of place. He found his escape in music. In church, the gospel music lifted him up. It gave him a sense of belonging, a connection to something bigger than his own small, lonely world. But outside of church, he was still an outsider. He carried his guitar to school. The other kids made fun of him. They called him names. He wasn't like them. He didn't fit in, so he retreated further into his music. It was his only friend, his only real companion. This deep bond with music was tied to his mother. Gladys was his whole world. The sun rose and set with her. He adored her, and she, having lost one son, poured all her love, all her hopes, and all her fears into her surviving boy. Their bond was incredibly intense, almost suffocating. He was her little baby long after he was a man. He never wanted to do anything to disappoint her. Her approval was everything. This created a powerful connection, but also another form of isolation. He relied on one person for his entire sense of self-worth. It made him vulnerable. It meant that if he ever lost her, he'd be completely adrift. Then fame came, and it came like a tidal wave. One minute, he was a truck driver. The next, he was the most famous person on the planet. You would think that would cure loneliness. All those screaming fans, all that adoration. But it did the opposite. It built a wall around him. Before, he was a lonely boy in a crowd. Now, he was a lonely man who couldn't even go into a crowd. He couldn't go to a movie. He couldn't walk down the street. He couldn't eat at a diner. He was a prisoner of his own fame. People didn't see a person anymore. They saw an image, an icon. They screamed at the suit, the hair, the sneer. They didn't know the boy from Tupelo who missed his mom. He surrounded himself with people. His group of friends, the Memphis Mafia, they were his buddies, his bodyguards, his support system. He loved them, but they were also on his payroll. He was the boss. He paid for everything. The houses, the cars, the fun. This created a strange dynamic. Could he ever be sure their friendship was real? Or were they just there because he was the king? When you're the one signing all the checks, you can never fully trust the laughter. It's another layer of isolation. You're the center of the universe, but you're also a planet unto yourself with everyone else in orbit around you. They could never truly understand what it was like to be him. So even in a room full of his closest friends, he was alone. The song he loved speaks of a whippoorwill. That bird's call is a sound of the rural South. It's a sound of night, of stillness, of solitude. It was a sound from his childhood. A sound from a time before the screaming crowds. Hearing that sound in a song must have transported him back to a simpler, quieter kind of loneliness. The kind he understood. It was a stark contrast to the loud, chaotic loneliness of his fame. Then came the biggest blow of his life. He was drafted into the army. They took the king of rock and roll, shaved his head, and put him in fatigues. It was a huge shock to his system. He was sent to Germany, an ocean away from everything he knew. And while he was there, he got the news. His mother was sick. He rushed home, but it was too late. Gladys died. He was devastated, utterly and completely broken. The one person who truly knew him, the one constant in his life, was gone. And he wasn't there for her final moments. The guilt and the grief were unbearable. At her funeral, he wept uncontrollably, throwing himself over her casket. He said he had lost everything. His world had lost its center. He had lost his home. From that point on, the loneliness became a permanent resident in his soul. It was no longer a fleeting feeling. It was a part of his identity. The song has a line about a robin weeping when the leaves begin to die. After his mother's death, it was as if the leaves were always dying for him. The world was a sadder, colder place. He went back to Germany to finish his service, but he was a changed man. He was adrift, just as he had feared. It was in Germany that he met Priscilla. She was just a teenager. He was a global superstar mourning his mother. He saw in her a chance to build a new life, a new home. He could shape her, protect her, he could create his own perfect world to keep the loneliness at bay. He poured all his attention into her. But even this was a form of control born from fear. He was trying to build a fortress against his own sadness. When he came back from the army, the world of music had changed. He was pushed into movies, and he hated most of them. He had dreams of being a serious actor, like Marlon Brando or James Dean. Instead, they put him in a series of light, formulaic musicals. He'd sing a few songs, kiss a girl, and win the day. Oh, they were hollow. They made a lot of money, but they starved his soul. This was a different kind of loneliness. The loneliness of an artist who isn't allowed to create. He felt like a commodity, a product being sold. His handlers and his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, controlled every aspect of his career. Now, he was trapped in a golden cage. He had a mansion, but it was a prison. He had contracts, but they were shackles. And he would complain to his friends. He would rage about the stupid scripts and the silly songs. But he felt powerless to change it. So the loneliness grew. It was the frustration of a man who couldn't be who he wanted to be. He was playing a part, and he was getting tired of the role. The midnight train in that sad song, Whining Low. It's a symbol of passage, of movement, of things and people leaving. For him, the train was always leaving the station. His youth was leaving. His creative freedom was gone. His mother was gone. The world he knew was disappearing behind him. His life with Priscilla at Graceland was an attempt to stop the train, to build a world that never changed. Graceland became his fortress. He rarely left. He turned night into day, sleeping until the afternoon and staying up until dawn. He sealed himself off from the outside world. The windows were covered. He lived in an artificial environment he could control, but the real world kept intruding. The marriage, built on such an unusual foundation, began to crumble. But Priscilla grew up. She wanted a life of her own, outside the walls of Graceland, outside of his shadow. She wanted to be more than just Mrs. Presley, and she left him. This was another devastating blow. It was a replay of his deepest fears. Abandonment. The person he had built his world around was walking away. It confirmed his belief that he was destined to be alone. The divorce sent him into a deep depression. He felt betrayed. He felt unloved. The king had been left. Now the loneliness was all-consuming. He tried to fill the void with food, with spending, with more women, with a deeper reliance on prescription drugs. The drugs were supposed to help him sleep, to give him energy, to kill the pain. But all they did was isolate him further. They created a fog between him and the world. They muffled his feelings, but they didn't make them go away. They just pushed him down, where they festered. In his final years, he was a lonely king on a lonely throne. He would perform on stage in Las Vegas, a conquering hero in a white jumpsuit. For those 2 hours, he could connect with the audience. He could feel their love. It was a powerful drug. But then the show would end. He would go back to his empty hotel suite, and the silence would return. The silence was always waiting for him. The song talks about the moon hiding its face, about a falling star. These are images of cosmic loneliness, of feeling small and insignificant in a vast, empty universe. For a man who was bigger than life, who was called the king, to feel that small, it's a profound kind of sadness. He had reached the pinnacle of success, and all he found there was a profound emptiness. There was nowhere else to climb. He was on top of the mountain, all by himself. He would talk to his friends about his search for meaning. He read books on religion and spirituality looking for answers. He was searching for something to fill the hole in his soul. The hole that had been there since his brother's stillbirth. The hole that his mother's death had ripped wide open. The hole that fame and fortune could never fill. So when he sang that song, it was all there. Every line was a page from his own diary. Hear that lonesome whippoorwill. He sounds too blue to fly. That was him. The boy from Tupelo who is too sad to fly free from his own gilded cage. The midnight train is whining low. That was the sound of his mother leaving him, of Priscilla leaving him, of his own life passing him by. I've never seen a night so long when time goes crawling by. That was every night in the big empty house after the applause died down. The moon just went behind a cloud to hide its face and cry. That was him, projecting his own sorrow onto the heavens, feeling so alone that even the sky was weeping with him. Did you ever see a robin weep when leaves begin to die? That means he's lost the will to live. This was the core of it, the reflection of his own depression, his own loss of hope. He had lost his will to fight the loneliness. He was just enduring it. He didn't write the words. He didn't have to. Hank Williams had already written them for him decades before. The song was a perfect vessel for his own pain. He could pour all his grief, all his isolation, all his heartbreak into that simple melody and those devastatingly simple words. When he sang it, he wasn't just performing, he was testifying. He was telling the world, and maybe himself, the deepest truth of his life. That underneath the jumpsuit, the swagger, and the sneer, he was still just that little boy from Mississippi. The one who lost his brother at birth. The one who was scared and alone in the dark. The song was I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and for Elvis Presley, it was more than a song. The story was his autobiography.